Olhai are one of the most ancient Sumer city-states of ancient southern Entre Rios. Mesopotamia existed since the 6th millennium BB till 4th century BB. It was located in the southern Babylonia, in the south of modern Tel el-Mukiyar in Iraq, near Nasiriyah, in lower reaches on the west bank of the Euphrates River in the territory having the modern Arab name, Tel el-Mukayhar. The Bituminous Hill. This city is mentioned in the Old Testament as Ur-the Chaldaic, Abraham's homeland. Area or number Noise. Urim, nowadays Tel el-Mukiyar, was located in the mouth of the Euphrates River. Except the city of this nome treated also the city of Eridu, nowadays Abu Shakrain. Mura and the settlement buried under Hill Tel el-Ubit. His Sumer name isn't established. Communal god of was Nana. In the city of Eridu god Enki was esteemed. His settlement was founded on the place of in the 6th millennium BB, in the 4th millennium BB, in the period of Uruk, became the city. The era of the first blossoming of is carried approximately to the beginning of the 3rd millennium BB. It is the so-called early dynastic period. 3000–2400 BB. Then dominated over the adjacent rural Okruji area about 90 km. And several smaller cities, Eridu, Tumur and the ancient settlement Ubaid. Controlling the southern part of the delta of Euphrates and an exit to the Persian Gulf, competed in fight for domination to Entre Rios to Uruk. Since the 3rd millennium BB, was one of the largest centers of a Sumer civilization. During an era of the blossoming was the multi-inhabited city with magnificent temples, palaces, the areas and public buildings, and its inhabitants. Both men and women loved jewelry. Temples, a ziggurat, a necropolis of time of the I dynasty, including 16 so-called imperial tombs, stone crypts from Dramosa. Human sacrifices. Up to 74 people. Chariots, weapon, precious utensils, etc. Defense of walls, harbors, ziggurat, temples, palace, mausoleum, inscriptions, cuneiform archive, stone sculpture, cylindrical seals, etc. Period of the 3rd dynasty. Residential quarters 3, the 2nd millennia BB. In the period of the 3rd stage of the early dynastic period in rules i.e. dynasty of Lugali. The list of their names in the imperial list from Nippur. The list of semi-legendary dynasties of Sumer and Akkad. Abounds with admissions and mistakes. On original inscriptions we know 6 names of this dynasty. The list calls only 4 of them and adds still, perhaps it is wrong, Bululu nobody. The power and richness of the 1st dynasty of are demonstrated by the imperial tombs found in this city. The wealth was based by Lugali not only on occupation of the temple earth by them, what we can guess according to some indirect data, but also on trade. About 2310 BB was beaten by the Akkad Sargon Drevnam, who included it in structure of the uniform power and put the daughter Enkidu on, famous to us also as the Potus, the supreme priestess Entum of lunar god of Nanana. In the 24–22 centuries BB it was subordinated to the neighboring city-states.
After some decline and exile from the country of nomads QTF by the Yurikski governor Utuk Hengel blossomed again during board of the Three Dynasty of
2112-1996 BB. In the 21st century BB, having become the capital of the Kingdom of Sumer and Akkad. The founder of this dynasty, Urnamur, constructed the huge ziggurat glorifying Nana, god of the moon, and issued the code of laws. Fragments remained. His successor of Shulgi strengthened hegemony of having built decentralized officialdom.
Invasion of Amarayski tribes and Elamitski troops at a boundary 2 millennia BB led to plunder and ruin of
Narrates poetic crying about death of about these tragic events. After several years of occupation of the ruined city, 2003-1996 BB. Elamita left having left to his governor Zisin, the daughter of one of them, Ishmidagan, who accepted his Sumer name of Ananatum, became the supreme priestess of and began restoration of temples of the city. Could revive at board of an Amarayski dynasty of Larsa. Continued to remain the important Sumer city and during the Babylon era. However, participation of in a revolt of the south of Mesopotamia minds the son Hammurapi, Samsuluna, turned back not only demolition of city walls what it reports Samsuluna's inscription 1739 BB about, but also ruin of residential quarters of the city and the termination of activity of an Eduba, schools where Erski copyists studied. The Babylon Tsar Nabonid carried out excavation in and reconstructed a local ziggurat.
During domination of a dynasty of the country of the sea, Kasset Assyrians and the New Babylon Kingdom kept the value of the trade and craft center, but salinization of soils in the delta of Euphrates caused decline of agriculture and outflow of the population from the city.
In the 4th century BB, the city was finally left by the inhabitants who remained in it, presumably because of the changed climate and change of the riverbed of Euphrates.
The ancient city of is mentioned in the Bible Chaldaic, from where Abraham and his family are. The imperial game of found the archaeologist Leonard Woolley on excavation of the imperial cemetery of
British Museum. When was founded, water level in the Persian Gulf was 2.5 meters higher than today. Therefore it is considered that had the marshland and used channels only for transportation, but not for irrigation.
Fish, birds, tubers and reed could support economically without the need for agricultural revolution, which sometimes moves forward as a prerequisite for an urbanization.
A city apparently is divided into areas, with the merchants living in one quarter and handicraftsmen in another. There were wide and narrow streets and also open spaces for meetings. Houses were built of brick and clay plaster. In large buildings the stone laying was strengthened by bitumen and reed. People were often buried
separately and alone, sometimes with jewelry, pots and weapon.
In cams or mines under floors of houses.
Was surrounded with inclined shaft 8 meters high and about 25 meters wide, in some places bordered with a brick wall.
In other places of the building were united in ramparts. The Euphrates River supplemented these strengthenings on west side of the city.
One of the first Europeans the barrow over the city was visited in 1625 by Italian Pietro della Valle, who found here bricks with a cuneiform writing. Excavation of Ur is for the first time made in 1854 by the employee of the British consulate in Basra, Taylor, for the British Museum.
Ruins of the Temple of Local God Crossing, Houses of Great Light, and also interesting necropolises, with burials or in round coffins, or under the brick arches, or for the poor. And clay vessels were found. Excavation found defensive walls, palaces, temples, ziggurat tombs, cuneiform archive. At skeletons, the remains of funeral veils and many clay are found, is more rare, the copper vessels containing one's food and drink. The safety of clay coffins and arches is explained by drainage devices. The Osushka of hills was reached by the vertical clay pipes lowered to the soil.
During the interwar period, ruins of Ur were in details investigated by an Anglo-American expedition led by Leonard Woolley.
Among Woolley's finds which thundered for the whole world, the Queen's Tomb Shubad, a standard of war and peace with the most ancient images of fighting chariots and Ersky harps, the first string musical instruments known to the scientist. The majority of exhibits came to the British Museum. Under the leadership of Woolley, the majestic ziggurat in Ur was exempted from thousand-year drifts. A decade later, Saddam Hussein disposed to return to a monument, initial shape, and made his reorganization, the event which received extremely ambiguous assessment of scientists. During the Iraqi War, Americans developed in an immediate vicinity with the ancient settlement Ollie's Air Base for what also underwent criticism of archaeologists. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.